type your name. All right, so we're going to talk about the PR and just title and what title does in general. When I was, and I've got Crystal Cruz here. She's an escrow officer from North Star Title. She's awesome. She's like escrow dynasty, where like her grandparents invented escrow, and then everybody and every generation since then has been in escrow, and like doesn't know anything but escrow, which is good because when I first got my real estate license in 1998, I had no idea what the title side did or what escrow was. None. And you know, unless they've changed how they teach the pre-licensing courses in real estate school, they kind of go, oh, title's an important thing. Now go pass your test. And then your very first deal, you're like, what is title? It seems like it's important to the deal. I just don't know what it is, right? And it's a little like mortgages, right? You go, I don't know, I feel like I should meet a loan officer because that sounds like it's also important to the deal. But what I do know is how to calculate a seller's net, and I do know how to, you know, pass the test. But I don't know anything else, right? So then you need to go see Russ and go through pre-agent training to learn how to actually sell real estate, and then you need to, you know, get this group. It takes a big group to sell real estate, and it's, you know, your clients look at you as the expert in coordinating the team, right? It's hard to coordinate the team and really talk intelligently to your client if you're not sure what the team is doing. And the purpose of this class is to really help you understand, show you what happens with a PR, what happens in title, so that you can go, oh, an escrow officer does this, title officer does that. I understand what a title company's role is. And then we're going to look at the PR, at the preliminary report or the title report or the commitment for title insurance. It goes by a whole bunch of different names. But in the Rep C, in the purchase contract, one of the required seller's disclosures is to provide the buyer with a copy of a commitment for title insurance, is what I believe. Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Rep C, I think they call for a commitment for title insurance. And then you call and go, I need a commit. And then somebody goes, yeah, you just ordered a PR. And you go, well, what's that? Or yeah, it's a title. Well, what's that? It's all the same thing. So it goes by PR, preliminary report, title report, or commitment for title insurance. It's required when you have a listing for your seller to give that to the buyer. If you're on the buyer side, it's required for, you know, it's part of their due diligence is to review that. So what'll happen is you'll get into a deal and you'll order or you'll get from the other side. If you're on the buyer side, if you're on the seller side, the seller's going to look at you and go, what am I supposed to do? That's their code of saying, go get everything that I'm supposed to hand off because I don't want to read the contract, but you're the expert, right? So you're going to either order a title, a PR, a title report, or a commitment for title insurance, or you're going to receive it. If you're on the buyer side, you're going to receive this thing, and the buyer is going to go, wow, that's a whole bunch of legal sounding gibberish. What should I be doing with this, right? So it's important for you to understand how to walk them through what the different parts of a title report, what the different parts are, what they mean, and what parts your buyers should be aware or concerned about. So the last majority of this class, we're actually going to go through an actual PR or title report that is the messiest title report I've ever seen in my life. It has everything except for HOA, which we'll talk about, but it has everything else. And so it's a really good jumping off point. Now, I think online, you guys can unmute yourselves, right?
Yes.
So as we go through, if you have questions, ask. We want you to walk out of this room at the end of this class being little junior experts at title, so that it's not a mystery what the title company does or why it's there, other than I just know I go there, I sign the documents, and then I go up to the 6th floor and get my check. And it's a good day, right? We want you to know what's going on behind the curtain. So I'm going to let Crystal, you ready to start our, yep. Let's do. There you go.
Sweet.
talking about for a minute.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Crystal. For those of you who don't know me, North Star is your affiliated title company. I am the lead escrow officer down at North Star Title. Personally, I've been doing this coming up on 15 years. I feel really old saying that. But as Sam said, I am 4th generation in this business. So I've tried to escape many times, worked for Merrill Lynch for about 2 years in compliance, and then I came right back. So I do thoroughly love my job. I feel like I have so many compartments in my brain of knowledge. If you come down and ask me a question, I'll probably stare at you for 2 seconds and go, sorry, I was finding the folder in my mind. I sleep, eat, breathe, title, and escrow. So if you're new to the industry or if you have any questions, please feel free to come downstairs, make an appointment, email me to make an appointment. If we're not handling the transaction and you still have questions, because honestly, I still learn something new pretty much every single day, and I've been doing this for a really long time. So if you ever have questions, or you feel like your answer is not being answered in a way that you understand, because everybody explains things differently and you retain things differently. So if you need a second opinion or a second, answer, please feel free to come down. I'm more than happy to help. Okay. So we're going to go through about the course overview really quick. So we're going to go through the parts of the PR. What is escrow? We're the mysterious behind the scenes party that no one really knows what we do. What title insurance is, policy types. We're going to review that crazy report that Sam talked about, the top 10 common title issues, then I'll open up for questions and answers. But please, as we're going through, if you have me, stop me, and let's get your questions answered, okay? All right, so parts of the prelim. So you have 3 main parts of APR that you care about, okay? Schedule A is who, what, and where. So this is going to have your parties who are involved in the transaction. It's going to have the property address and what policy is going to be issued is Schedule A. Okay, so if you're the owner's side, so you're representing the seller, Schedule A is going to list the owner's title policy. It's going to list how much you're selling the home for, current vesting. Buyer side, you'll see a little more detail because the loan policy will also disclose who your lender is on the transaction, your loan amount, etc. We'll go through that in more detail. B1, requirements. This is actually a requirement section specifically for title and escrow. So if we have to look at anything outstanding, make sure it's like there's a survey that needs to be done, that's kind of listed in here for us to make sure, okay, a deed needs to be drafted to transfer ownership. Those kinds of things are listed there. B2, these are exceptions. So these are things that are not covered by the title policy and or need to be cleared. So this talks about, in this section, you'll have HOA, liens, judgments, current mortgages that are recorded on the property. Okay, any questions so far in these 3 sections? Right. All right, so what is escrow? We are the person that juggles the whole back end of your transaction. So pretty much I always sum it up like we do an attorney's job in your real estate transaction. We handle all your legal paperwork. We make sure that the title report is clear of any encumbrances. Encumbrances are liens, judgments, mortgages. Make sure everything will be paid off. So when that transfer of ownership happens, it is clear and pretty and no one can come knocking on your new owner's door saying, I own your property or I have an interest in your property. Okay, as part of our job. So we clear off all the title. In Utah, there's split title. I did California escrow. I don't think anyone in here is, right? Everyone's here in Utah. So in California, both parties close the same side. Here, it's split. So your seller can close at one title company, buyers can close at another. Title also coordinates with the other side, make sure that they're doing their part, making sure their PR is clear, making sure that we have all their clearing information on their parties too. So that way, when everything is combined at the end, because you have a master title policy that is submitted at the end to everybody, that is matching, okay? So we want to make sure that all the parties are coordinated. We also clear off, like I said, the PRs. We get in contact with old lenders, so there's old trustees on the property. We take care of clearing that. We communicate with the county, the city. If there's liens, judgments, notices of default, we help take care of. There's bankruptcy on the property, we can help guide your clients on how to stop the bankruptcy process, make sure that that's all being taken care of so that way they can't actually sell the home. Any questions about like what escrow does specifically? No? Okay. little more in detail. So we're a neutral third party. So we have your client's best interest in mind. So if we feel that the lender or the agent is trying to go through a loophole, it is our job to put a pause on the transaction, say, wait, we got to make sure that we're checking, dotting all of our I's and crossing all of our T's in this transaction, because it not only protects your client, but it protects us as title and you guys as agents and lenders. So we attend to all the details of opening, maintaining, closing of a real estate transaction. So that's part of that clearing, preparing all the documents for closing, working with the lender if there's a lender involved, working with private money people if they're involved. We coordinate all of it so then when we come to the closing, all the documents are ready, squared away, we're good to go and sign. We receive and disperse funds, another important piece. So we collect all the funds in the transaction. Okay, so on the buy side, we collect money from your buyer for their down payment and money from the lender. The lender then gives us the okay to use funds, we disperse accordingly. So whether if we have both sides, we disperse to the seller, to their payoffs, or to the other title company. We represent the seller, we're collecting all those funds in and dispersing per their instruction, paying off all the payoffs. Now, an added feature at North Star, we have a service called Safe Escrow. So pretty much every single penny that leaves our bank account is covered. So it validates your client's wires directly with the banks. So that way it prevents wire fraud. So that is something that's really important because wire fraud is definitely been a thing and it still is. So always when you have a client that needs a wire in money specifically, make sure that you tell them, please talk to title. Title should be providing those wire instructions and giving them instruction. We only can accept wires, not ACH transfers. I talk about this frequently because this is a common misconception. An ACH is the same thing as a wire, but unfortunately trust accounts do not take those, okay? And then we handle the curative work to ensure clear title. So that's what I was talking about earlier, about collecting all the collecting all the necessities for us to prove a clear title report, okay? Any questions about what escrow does? Okay, what is title insurance? So the insurance policy protects the property rights. So with the owner's title policy, that is one version of the title insurance that protects your client's interests for the lifetime they own the home, okay? Then we have the lender's title policy that protects the lender's interest in the property. So they have a lien on the property, they make sure they get paid out. Protects you against covered title defects. So this would be protected against a title defect would be if there's a deed that was not recorded correctly. That is very common, that there's a break in the chain of title. So at some point, a title company recorded something, they misspelled someone's name, they accepted it at time of recording, but then later down the line, you go and refinance your home, you find out that that deed actually wasn't recorded. The title policy will come in and help correct that issue, okay? Protects against past problems and covers future claims. So your owner's title policy, when that's issued, if all of a sudden you go to refinance or you get a notice saying that someone's liened your property, but it's in the previous owner's name, this is when the title insurance would come in and help. So they would help you clear that judgment, make sure it's taken off, making sure that person's interest in the property is removed and they get paid properly and the lien is put on the correct property now. That's something that protects against. Any questions so far? Okay, different policy types in more detail. So we have the loan policy that protects against title defects that could affect the lien of the mortgage and affect for life of the loan. So your loan policy, this is something that you have to purchase every time you refinance. Your owner's title policy, you don't. It's just a one-time purchase. You don't ever have to repurchase it again unless you buy a new property. So the loan policy only protects that current lender on the property. It makes sure that they are in first lien position. So when we issue out the loan policy, the part of the curative work, we want to make sure all the judgments are cleared off, because some of them, like an IRS lien, tax lien, those will actually go in first position over the mortgage. Okay, so that's why it's really important to make sure all that's cleared so the proper chain of title is reflecting. Owner's policy protects against title defects that could affect ownership rights and affected during the ownership of the property owner and their heirs. So let's say that you have a seller that goes to sell their house and they're an heir of someone who's passed away, they went to probate court. This owner's title policy still exists because they're the heir. They're the appointed heir of the property. Trust, same thing. If you have trust, it follows the line of the heirs in the trust. LLC, it'll always stay there. If you were to change title, so let's say you purchase a home in your single name, you're like, oh, I have more assets now, I'm gonna put it into a trust. It'll still follow because you're the owner of that entity, okay? Any questions about the types of policies at all and coverages before we kind of dive deeper into the PR? No? Anybody online? All good? You're watching the questions, right?
I'm watching.
Okay.
Actually, some popped up, they were just putting their license in.
Okay.
But can I say something real quick? So
Yeah.
we do have 2 people that are online that I just want to make sure if they want CE, you got to turn your camera on. So if your camera's not on, we can't give you CE.
We're strict here. Lay, as titled, we lay down the law always. So again, we're gonna go through these 3 parts of the PR. I'm going to warn you in advance. The B2 section of this PR is very, very scary. That is not typical, okay? This PR, these people who own this property are kind of blacklisted now. Nobody will give them title insurance, and you'll find out why. But don't be afraid, okay? This is not typical, especially if you're new. Okay, so this is Schedule A. I know, I just have to, Sam makes a joke of it, but it's kind of terrifying. So right here, this is what your Schedule A should look like, okay? So on here, you'll have the file number that'll be provided by the escrow office. So if you ever to call into your escrow team, that file number is kind of your reference number. Obviously, we can look up by owner and property, but that's a reference number. Section number 1 on this is the effective date. So your policy, let's say you have a listing that's been active for a while, you should have an updated policy. It's within 30 days, okay, before closing. So if you've had a listing for a while that's been active, you're doing your final audit in your file, make sure you ask your title company for an updated policy. That way we could do a quick update, make sure that there's no additional liens that have come up in the last 6 months. I've had a couple of files that are sitting on my desk for that long. Make sure you always have an effective date within the last 30 days. Your lender will also require that. Some lenders require 60 days. So just watch that date if you're a compliance person like me, okay? Section 2, these are the policy types. So this is going to differ, this section here, on what side you're representing. So if you're representing the seller, you should only be seeing the owner's title policy, okay? It's going to reflect your amount. So the amount up there, that is the amount of the property. So as you negotiate, if your sales price changes, your policy is going to change. So make sure at the end, your policy reflects the correct sales amount. The premium amount is also listed there. So that is the premium title policy amount that your seller will be paying. So if your seller has a question and you don't have a net sheet yet, that's going to be their title policy premium, okay? Kind of like a side note to premiums, we did post about this yesterday about reissue rates. So if you have a seller that recently sold within the last 4 years, and it's their primary residence, and they can show their last title policy, which we can help get, they do qualify for a discount. So it's a 35% discount on the title policy. So with the increase of the property values, we've been saving people about $1,600 sometimes on transactions on just the title policy. So kind of keep that in mind for your sellers, okay? On the loan policy, so if you represent the buyer, you'll see the loan policy. Here is a little more detailed. So have the amount there will be the amount of the loan that your client's getting. So that will also adjust through the transaction. The premium will be the premium for the lender's title policy. Proposed insured is going to be your lender. So that will be where your lender's name is listed. So if that differs, raise red flag. I've skipped here, proposed insured, this should be your client that's purchasing the buyer, okay? So that doesn't match. Also be like, hey, that's not my client. Can we get that fixed, okay? Number 3, this is, typically they're always fee simple. It's just the interest in the land. So this will change if you have a commercial property, agricultural, but typically it's always fee simple. Number 4 is Title to the estate. So this is the listed owner currently on the property. So this will be the legal vesting. So this will say, so let's say your client signed as individuals on your contract and you get your PR back and the PR says, psych, it's in an LLC, red flag again. Your documents need to match how ownership is held. So your seller needs to be listed exactly here. So if it has a trust or an LLC, your contract needs to reflect the trust or LLC. Simple fix for you guys. Quick addendum, right? Just to change the seller name. This also will raise red flags. So let's say you have someone say, oh, I own this home, and someone's name comes over on it, and you're like, who's this person? Oh, well, that was my mom. She passed away. Okay, there's a whole process. And so you have to make sure they go through the probate court and make sure that all the proper documentation has been handled before. So if you come across that, we can help guide you guys. We have all the pamphlets and requirements for all the counties on how to go through probate court. Super simple process once it's started. On here too, if you see 2 people listed as joint tenants and you only have 1 person signing, got to figure out if that other person is deceased or they're divorced or how that will be. Title will start asking you questions too if we see that. Okay, so that is an important section here. And then here, this has an Exhibit A attached. So Exhibit A is also the legal description of the property. So that will show you if it's a meets and bounds, all your degrees of the property, where it's listed, the lot number, all of that. Okay. Any questions about the Schedule A section? You guys are easy. Schedule B. So this is the kind of the instructions to title and escrow about what requirements we need. So it's pretty simple. Pay us the premiums and fees. Okay, great. Provide us with the releases and reconveyances. So as we collect all the curative work, we have to present that to the underwriter and say, ta-da, look, we did our job. Can you insure us now? Okay. If we miss something, we'll have to go back and correct it. I always tell everybody, everything in real estate is correctable. However, sometimes it's an inconvenience of time or it can cost a little money, okay? But everything is fixable. So if something doesn't look right, just ask, we can walk you through it, we can help, it's okay, okay? There's always a way to fix it. This right here is provide copies of agreements. So we're required to provide the REPC, any additional agreements outside, so like the divorce decrees are going through a divorce, probate documents. And the rest of this is in writing of who we transfer ownership. After we receive the information, it gives us instructions about how to produce the final title policy. So that's section 1. You really don't care. Section 2 is what you guys truly care about for the policy. So again, this gets a little crazy. But I'm going to go through kind of in order. Schedule B. So it kind of says anything that is not recorded on the property is obviously not going to be recorded or protected in the title policy. Okay. So I've had a couple of times where a client came back and said, hey, UDOT has a interest in my property. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It was an agreement in this specific situation. The seller of the property had passed away. The heir of the property had no idea that he signed some agreement 10 years ago, got $15,000 for the agreement. None of that was recorded. So the recording of the interest in the property never happened. And so we're only as good as the recordings, right? So anything that's not recorded that comes up after is unfortunately not protected, okay, on the title policy. So we try to do our best, but sometimes that does happen, okay? Taxes and assessments. So this will show here if they're not shown as existing liens. So let's say that recently there is a pending judgment against your seller and it hasn't been recorded and it's not recorded by the time we close, that won't be protected, okay? We typically get more along the lines of like a refinance too. If you're refining and we don't know about a judgment and it gets slapped on, like, that sucks, sorry. Facts and judgments and interest claims, easements on the property, encroachments. So here, so you may have like on the property right of ways. If it's a right of way that's been used for, let's say, 20 years, right, on a property, that may not be recorded, but it's an agreed upon by all the surrounding properties, like this is a trail to get to XYZ that everyone's been using for 20 years. That's not gonna be recorded in the property, but it will be something that is still an accessible road, because it's been, right, it's an unrecorded easement. So if you ever have a property, for example, I had somebody recently who was looking at a property that was behind a house. The access point was only granted to a very specific individual. And then now that they were selling the property, the current owner's like, well, I don't approve it. Right. The easement had only been happening for 9 years. So because he verbally said it's only for you, sorry, tough luck. So then the new buyer of that property, they really one day would have to negotiate a new right of way onto the property or purchase a sliver of that property in order to access the land behind it. Okay, super fun. Yeah, so great. Ask questions, honestly. It's like, so if you have a seller that's selling or like a property like that, keep asking, how are you accessing this property? What is your agreement? How long has it been for? These are all really important, especially if you represent the buyer, because you could be so far along. Unfortunately, this person was past the due diligence and F&A deadline that they're like, I don't know what to do now, right? Because they're going to lose their earnest money. So just ask as many questions you possibly can. If there was a recorded easement, it would be in this section here. So you would show it was so recorded easement. You see what the agreement is. You can read it. We can provide you a copy. If you don't see that, then you know that there's an issue like that. Start asking questions, okay? So that way your client is protected. It'll have, they will list like money claims, any liens. So we're getting to the fun part. Okay, this section here are delinquent property taxes. So we're gonna list for you guys all the delinquent property taxes, state taxes. So here, if we go back to section 8, right? Your sales price on this property right here is 800,000. Keep that in mind as we go through this. Okay. So this property is being sold for $800,000. You have delinquent property taxes just on this page going back to 2016. So these amounts listed here, when you see the general property taxes listed, this is the amount that is being charged. This does not include any additional interest over the years. This is just what they assessed the property at in 2016. And then if your client has delinquent taxes, no, there's going to be additional fees tacked onto it. This, I know this is scary, but for a traditional property, if you have a seller that's really, really tight on funds, or you know is like about to go to short sale or foreclose on the property, and you see delinquent taxes, start asking them questions, okay? Because we want to make sure that they understand, like, hey, you're delinquent, you're going to have like $100 extra that we weren't anticipating, okay? So
100,000.
yeah. So this one right here. So 2019, it was $20,000 delinquent. 2018, you're at about 7,500, and it continues on. You also have a tax certification for an improvement district. So if you're in an improvement district, they can also lien your property, and you have a separate fee that you have to pay to them annually. So on here too, when you get these PRs, it'll say, hey, this property is a part of, let's just use this one, Olympus Improvement District. Okay, hey, buyer, you're gonna have an additional fee that you're gonna have to pay monthly, annually, quarterly, depending on the district. That's an additional fee that client will have to pay. So sometimes you could have the improvement district, HOA, property taxes, and utilities, all of it to be paid, okay? So it continues on. So this is the last part of the delinquent taxes. Then it tells you right here, so this is the subject properties located in the boundaries of the district. So this is the flag of like, okay, there might be an extra fee. This talks about rights of claim to title. So let's say you had a lawsuit and an attorney files on a notice of interest, okay? This would be listed here. Notice of interest means you can't sell this property until I give you the okay to do so, okay? If that happens, let's say you have a seller that has a judgment and a notice of interest from the same party, we will collect that payoff for the judgment, pay them, and then there'll be an additional deed recorded to release that notice of interest, okay? So there is a way to take care of it, and we will handle all of that. Just know there's additional fees, okay? Like I said, everything is correctable, but it costs money, okay? Any questions so far before we kind of get into more of the defects on this property? No? Okay. Fun. So right here, we're still continuing on like the boilerplate of the PR. This talks about easements. There's right of ways here listed. These are recorded. These will stand. These will still continue on after the transfer of ownership because they're recorded on the property and it's there. There are certain situations where that property I was telling you about, the recorded easement on the property was very, very specific, and it said, nope, I only agree to this person if the change of business happens on the property behind me. I will no longer allow them access to the property. So it is kind of important. If it doesn't look like a standard, or you know that the other person is kind of weird about their easement right of way, ask for a copy. You can read it and it will go in detail of, oh, hey, this will transfer over to the new buyer, no problem, you're good to go, or you have to negotiate that in your, for your buyer too. Okay, also that would be listed here in the boilerplate will be if there was the city didn't like, there's a zoning code error, right? They'll record on here a notice saying, hey, you broke a code, you have to pay a fine. That will also need to be addressed. Any other things that be listed here would be delinquent state taxes, so income. There would be any liens from the counties, the cities, the improvement districts. You also have your HOA up here as well. So with HOAs, if there is a reinvestment fee, it'll also be recorded on here. So it'll be a line item. So you'll have your HOA, all of your CC&Rs, which title can provide you because they're recorded on the property. And then you'll see notice of investment. So when you have a property you're buying in Daybreak, you're probably gonna see that like 2 or 3 times because of their crazy HOAs out there. So that is an additional fee to kind of keep in mind. Yeah.
So for like those reinvestment fees, because I just actually just came across that for the first time this last week.
Okay.
I'm just curious, so is that like up to the HOA themselves or like a city, the HOA themselves?
So it's HOA themselves.
Okay.
So some HOAs, depending on where you're at, have a flat $150 reinvestment fee, or
I
like
say it was like based off of 0.5% of sales price.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, interesting.
yeah, and so that is more common now in the newer
Okay.
developments. So in Daybreak, you actually have a flat one and you have a 0.5
Okay.
reinvestment. And that's something to negotiate, right? So if you get the PR back and originally you said, oh, my buyer will pay for those fees, and you get back, like, oh, wait, you're gonna tell me it's this, then you can start negotiating, oh, we're gonna split it in half, or no, the seller needs to pay for it. But yeah, so the 0.5 will be listed. If it doesn't have it listed, it's typically a flat fee, and it'll be on the HOA payoff once that is received. If you're representing the buyer, the seller's title company is responsible for providing the HOA information, even if the buyer's paying for the fees. So we'll definitely collect that from them. Seller's responsible. This is another reason why I highly recommend when you go under like a exclusive right to sale to open up transaction with title right away. So we can start doing all of this work here, okay? That way we could tell you, hey, there's a reinvestment fee, because then you guys can know already ahead of time, okay, so my seller is delinquent on this, my seller's pay off these mortgages. So when you go under contracts, you kind of know what you're negotiating for your seller, okay? So I always recommend to open up. Before we start diving into trust deeds, I do want to give like a little break. Do you guys need to use the restroom at all? We're like 45 minutes in. You good? Yeah. Okay, let's take about, for people and I, we're gonna take about a 5-minute break for everyone here to use the restroom. You guys use one there.
So it's like the most, like you've seen it, like is that the most delinquent like taxes
That-
you've ever seen, like on a title report?
2 or 3 years is pretty normal for delinquent taxes
Okay.
right now
Okay.
because of COVID,
Right.
unfortunately.
So do they pay that off? Do they have to pay that off before they can sell it?
Yeah.
They can't
Well,
use the
you-
money.
you
Can they
paid
use
off
the
through
money?
a transaction.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so you collect and pay through the transaction. Sometimes even if you are delinquent and you have like a lender, the lender could be paying your taxes still for you,
Okay.
but there may be a negative escrow account on that account.
Okay. So it's basically almost all negotiable within the transaction still. That's right.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
That's good. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. It's my first time teaching a class completely by myself.
She's doing
Jeez. I just said my team back there. I was like, I don't have anyone to bounce my jokes off of. Like, Sam and I usually have a bunch of jokes, but that's all right. Ooh, that is not pretty smelling.
It's not minty.
No,
Tequila.
I don't really know. It just doesn't smell great. Don't use that one. Yeah. And then for you guys here, I brought some swag up. So we have some tote bags, pens, notepads, and stuff. You can grab anything on the way out. Fun stuff. Yeah. How's everybody's Thanksgiving? Is it good? Yeah? Stuffed with food already? Like still? I feel like I'm still recovering. Yeah. I feel like you have like turkey leftovers for days, and so you're constantly in the turkey coma for like the next week after. Do we have fun plans for December? Are you guys gonna keep powering through it? Power through? We're gonna power through?
Make money.
I need my
There you
first
go.
order to be great. So
That's good. Gotta keep powering through it all. We will be there too. We will be powering through.
we are too.
One more person to come back, and then we will start up again. So at the agents that are in here, do you guys focus on more sellers or buyers? Or like kind of 50-50, like
I'm more seller based.
seller based? Okay, right, yeah. Just getting started?
I don't know. Yeah, I
No.
just so I don't know.
Okay, so for you.
Most of our leads are buyers, but I don't want to limit anything.
Okay, awesome. How about you? Same? Okay, I don't know your name.
Addison.
Okay, and then what about you?
Most buyers.
Mostly buyers? Okay, that's awesome. So we do have some educational pieces for like new buyers and stuff. So if you ever need anything or ever need something extra to create a touch point with your leads, let me know. I can provide that to you guys. It will have like North Star's logo on it. So I can't co-brand with you guys, but some of the information on there is really great. It talks about like what FHA, I have stuff that talks about what FHA is, what to expect in a transaction, all of that. And then I do have pieces that are bilingual too. So we have Spanish and English versions of all of our documents. So just kind of keep that in mind. So everyone here likes buyers. Sellers, I have some stuff too, kind of going in more detail because sometimes sellers recently have been doing more research and like the owner's title policy is optional. Okay. Section 6.2 of your rep fee says you agreed to pay it. You're past that point, so you got to pay it. And they don't understand what it is or what it's for, right? I try my best when I do closings with sellers and for buyers to explain, like, just like the title company, your title policy becomes like the middleman, the neutral party, if anything were to go wrong, right? And it prevents your buyer from coming back to you and go, you lied. There is a judgment on my property that was in your name and you lied and didn't tell me about it. Like it's a buffer, right? So it does still, even though it mainly protects the new owner of the property, it does kind of give a buffer protection to the previous owner of the property too. You know, they can't go after them. Title policy will help protect anything like that to prevent any lawsuits between the parties. Yeah, but if you ever need any additional touch points, please reach out and I can definitely provide those. We're gonna get started. Hopefully we're not lining back again. Okay, so remember when I went back to Schedule A, property is being sold for $800,000. Okay. First deed of trust on the property is $800,000. Raise red flag. Right. Cool. You're gonna tell me that you're gonna pay, what was it, $35,000 in property taxes, and then, oh wait, you have $800,000. Are you gonna bring in money? Like, this is when you start asking those questions, right? Sometimes in a normal transaction, this could be an old lien. So how you could tell where to panic, where to be like, oh, they'll take care of it, it's gonna be right here. Okay, so it's gonna list who the trustor is. Trustor is going to be the owner of the property. So if this is not in your client's name, then, oh, okay, they'll just clear it off. Totally fine. We're good. It is in your client's name. Hey, you have this lien. Did you pay it off? Like, did you recently refinance? Start asking those questions. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of people taking advantage of like the COVID help programs. And so they have 3 or 4 liens on the property. So they have their main mortgage, a HELOC, plus 2 additional liens. If you do the HEMP program, which is just a state program that you could do to help, it does get tied in to one of your loans majority of the time. But there have been a lot of people recently who have just lovely liens everywhere, private money liens, loans from people, pullouts from a different HELOC from a different company. So definitely start looking at those things as we approach, COVID help assistance kind of halting, right? Okay, so we're at 800,000. Ready? Okay. So now we have what I would probably say, well, it's probably a second mortgage at 166,000. Right. So on here, you'll see a couple things here. So there's subordination agreement, affidavit as trustee, subordination trustee. Right here, these are really common. This is saying, hey, I'm the lender. 2 years later, I want to clear my books off. I sold it to someone else. Someone else is now taking care of the loan. I'm the next lender. I want to clear my books. I sold it to the next lender. That happens a lot. So you have clients that are closing, like you have a buyer who's going through, let's say, United Wholesale Mortgage. I'm going to tell you right now, that loan's going to be sold within probably 6 months in a home or sooner. They are notorious for it, and it's just because it's how, 1, they make money, and 2, they have more capacity to keep continuing to loan to other people. So if you see that, don't worry. Totally cool. This is where you should worry. This is a notice of default. Okay, so this is saying, hey, in April, you have a major payment for defaulting on your home or your property. This is a commercial property. So this is saying, we now are probably going to start looking at foreclosing our property. So notice of default. If you were to declare bankruptcy, or if your client started it, past a certain point, you can't revoke the bankruptcy, but you can in the beginning stages of it, and you can sell the home. Pretty much you go to court and say, hey, I have an offer on the property. It'll cover all my liens. Can I sell the home? They'll go, okay, yeah, fine. We'll reverse the bankruptcy. Now, if you see past the notice of default, you may then see a writ of execution. Super fun. Writ of execution means, hi, you are now severely delinquent and I'm about to take your property. So that says in that writ of execution, it's going to say August 30th of next year, we're going to sell your home. So you either need to pay us off by that time or you're done. Okay. Let's say you're still going through the process, your client hasn't done that yet, and you're like right there. So you can sometimes sweet talk. So I just had a file close where an attorney was actually trying to take the home from their client. So the attorney didn't get paid $10,000. They said, fine, you're not going to pay me. Bam, I'm selling your home. So they put that notice on the home and they were selling the property in 30 days. So usually it could be that quick turnaround time. Title will step in and help. So we'll kind of, I call it, for me personally, I have the crystal sparkle that I kind of sprinkle on people. Come on, you want to get paid, they want to make money. Let's just all make everyone happy, right? Because honestly, like if they were to continue forward with that sale, the likelihood of them getting paid, especially if there's a mortgage ahead of it, is very slim. So most of the time, they'll be like, all right, fine, like if you think you can pay us off at this deadline, here's a payoff, go ahead. So we could sweet talk them. So if you see beyond that point, there's more questions to ask, but no defaults are what gets scary. Then we have another deed listed here. Okay, this one is an all-inclusive trust deed. Typically, this is a private financing. So their seller financing there's private financing where a private money lender gives you. This can be an all-inclusive trust deed. Another version of this could be of this type of deed listed could be if they did a seller financing. So that means that the seller of the property is holding the note on the property. That could be an all-inclusive trust deed. I know seller financing, I'm going off topic. Seller financing can be described in two different ways. So you have seller financing where the transfer of ownership happens and they just hold a lien on the property and this buyer is paying them, kind of like a rent to own situation. But the ownership has transferred. And the other type of seller financing is what's called a contract for deed. I don't like them. I don't want to speak badly because people use it. But contract for deed is where the seller says, okay, cool, thank you for wanting to buy my house. I'm going to hold the transfer of ownership until you pay me all the money that you agreed to pay me. Okay. I'm going to say a lot of this results in a lawsuit. So if you have a client, though, that wants to enter that kind of contract, my recommendation is always have an escrow company that is managing all the payments for you guys. So that way your buyer's protected and they can't randomly say, no, I'm defaulting on you, you don't move out, okay? Just make sure your buyers are really protected in those situations, but that could be also what inclusive is. Okay, so this one has no amount provided. It's a mystery. We have official recording, a subordination agreement to it. Cool. So we have another lien. This one's $91,000. So what we're at, $1 million.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Give or take.
Yep. So sales price is $800,000. Hey, you're gonna bring in $200,000. Like what's going on? So this is a construction deed of trust. That means that they took out some money to build whatever they built on this property, and great. Well, they didn't pay it, so you have another notice of default on the property. Cool. You have another deed of trust, the 7 rents, another private money. So this one looks like the concrete company gave them a loan. It's $132,000. Okay, we're now at 1.2 million. Cool. This right here is a notice of construction lien. So they did not pay a contractor. So we're down to deeds of trust. So they have 1.2 million-ish, give or take, to pay off in just mortgages, plus $35,000 in taxes. I don't know about you, but I don't have $500,000 to chill in my bank account. Okay, here, the next part of this is where your additional liens are going to come in. So anything recorded after the mortgage, you can have a lien from a private party, lien from a company, a lien from the state, the city, counties, attorney liens, all that. That's will start happening here. Okay, so here we have a notice of construction lien. This is saying that they didn't pay it. This is $50,000. Super fun. Here we go. So red flag again, list pendants. That means that they are in court. So they're going to be suing the clients for the money with an outstanding court case. Now, with these, you'll see right here, you have another construction lien, another list pendants, a construction lien, another list pendants. It continues on. So they have not paid anybody on this property
Never
pretty
heard
much.
why.
How did they get away with it?
So this is, so
How does this happen?
good question. I don't know how people get away with it, to be completely honest, especially now. So back before the market crashed, this was super common. People would get loans and lie about their income, and they over encumbered themselves and they couldn't pay, and that's what caused the crash, right? And that's really unfortunate. Now, with all the regulations that are set in place, it is really, really hard to defraud anybody. However, if you go back, you had one legitimate loan. The others were, two legitimate loans. The others were private money. So they were telling people, no, it's going to be a great project. This is a construction. So let's just say they're building an apartment building. You're my investor, just put it on there. We're going to make our money back. No problem. We're going to be great. I'll pay the bills. That's why you're paying me. But that's not obviously what's happening. They weren't getting out these private money loans and paying off people. They just let it go and go and go and go and go. So when you get to this point though, that is when you get what's called blacklisted. So this LLC, no title company or underwriter will insure them because of this. Because most of the time, obviously, this results in lawsuits. So you already have 3 pending on here. And the title policy protects you on that, right? Helps you out. They don't want to be involved. They don't want to touch that. That's why a lot of underwriters don't insure contract for deeds, because there's a high liability of lawsuit. It was just like for you guys, right? If you crash your car 100 times and you go get new insurance, they're going to be like, no, we're not doing that. Or if you have medical insurance and unfortunately if they're medical, you've been sick a lot, like your premium is going to be higher, right? Title insurance, they just go, sorry, I'm just not going to give you any coverage. So when you go this crazy and liens and defaults and everything, you kind of get stopped. It's pretty much you can't be a part of real estate anymore at that point, which is unfortunate. But let's say on a normal transaction, you do have one lien and list pendants. This right here, on a regular transaction, title would contact the attorneys, make sure we get the payoffs for it. If they say, I'm sorry, this property can't be sold until after the court date, you're kind of stuck. So if there's already a assigned pending court date, we have to wait for that court date to happen. You could do something. So there was a situation once where they had a pending court date. I had the amount, you have the amount to pay. We typically take that amount and add an additional 1.5% to that amount and hold it. So you can still continue forward with it, but your sellers just have to know, hey, you're going to sign a document that's saying we're holding this lien amount plus 1.5%. We're holding it until your court date is resolved. If not resolved in 30 days, we'll release it to the courts and they will take care of it. Okay, because we can't technically hold funds past 30 days, or we don't like to. You know, some people negotiate about 60 days, but after that, we just release it. So in that way, that's taken care of. So, like for example, I had a client who had a pending court case, and this was someone that came to us for a second opinion. And she said, hey, I just want your opinion. They told me they were holding this amount until my court date. That was 2 days after closing. And I didn't want to lose my buyer. They said they'd hold it. And then all of a sudden I go to my court date and they're like, oh, the person dropped the case. So, oh, cool. That's so awesome. And she had in her mind all this documentation to show that she did not owe these people money anyway. So she's like, great. They just backed off. She went back to the title company and said, can I have my money? What happened? That person found out who she was closing with, came and said, I'm here for my check. Title company gave this person that was suing the girl the check, and she dropped the suit because of it. Can't do that. So if title that's what we are there for. So we will just hold, either we have to completely pause the transaction, or we have to hold money and make sure that all the liens are done, okay? So if you see a pending court case, we can tell you kind of like the situation status, when it's closed, when it's not, go from there. Another example of this I recently had, I like to give life examples. There was a murder on a property. The husband, the joint tenant on the property, committed the crime. So the people who were affected by this crime, it was not pretty at all, and it affected the property next door. There was a lot of things that he did post-crime that caused all these issues. There was a lawsuit of 7 people. Only 1 person came to the table, and they continued for the lawsuit. I think by the time I got the transaction, the lawsuit was pretty much done. It was just a trail of like the state doing what they needed to do. So in that situation, 1 person got awarded interest in the property. So what happens is so you have the case recorded, then you have a writ of execution saying this is the outcome of the court case, this is what we're going to do, and then there is whatever happens. So in the writ of execution in this property, for example, they were giving 50% ownership to the heir of the victim. Okay, so past that, this week is hard. It's like 90 days for people to start doing things. So if you're like in the middle of it, you can't sell the property until it's done. In that case, there's a sheriff's deed recorded. It changed ownership of the property with the 50% to the heir of the victim and the current lady. That situation, that's a tenants in common situation, and we figured out how to close the transaction. But just kind of keep your eye on that. I would say that's going to be more common, I feel like, in the next couple of years, just with court cases and judgments and not paying things. I just think it's going to be personally more frequent. Okay. Move on. I know, sorry. So here, this is more judgments. Judgments. Is it blurry online? It's blurry up here. No. No. Okay. You guys get the blur. So this is just more judgments. So I think, let's see, we're at 1.2, 40, 40, 40, 40, 40. Okay, we're like at $130,000, $108,000. So we're like well into the millions. Yeah, we're well into the millions at this point. Red flag, sorry, we're backing out. See ya.
This property is $1 million
See ya.
more expensive than it should be.
We're gonna continue to go.
Oh.
So we're gonna continue.
But wait,
More
there's
liens, but wait. There's a lot more.
Oh.
So yeah, so this property right here is not sellable unless the seller has $1 million to bring to the table to sell the property. This is why this expensive sale. This is why this person got blacklisted though, just because of how many things.
Surprised they didn't go, like, to prison.
I don't really know what happens. I know Sam knows more about it, but
Oh, okay.
he's not here. So
He's probably there right now.
right, he's in mediation for right now. So with all this, like, it can be scary when you're looking at it, but this is why it's so important to know what you're looking for, right? Like if you see on here, like these judgments and liens and stuff like that, if you see 1 or 2, it is so easy for us to get payoffs. The hard part for us for payoffs is IRS liens. So keep in mind, if you have your clients like, oh, I haven't paid my taxes in a couple of years, I have a couple of liens, it takes a minimum of 14 days to get that payoff in. This is again why you should get a preliminary title report when you go in listing, but also know that if you know this client has those things, 1, we're going to submit, might be 14 days. 14 days may come around, your client may have to sit for 2-3 hours on the phone to get a payoff from the IRS. And so don't ever do a short close on properties that you know that have crazy liens or issues with the government, because it does take a while. Okay, I like to be as transparent as possible when it comes to these kinds of things, because I think people have this idea, just call and get it. It's not that easy. With people who are late on their loan. So if you know that someone is saying, I'm in like the forbearance program, or I am 5 months late on my payment. Like, it's gonna take us a little bit to get that. Reason being is because most likely that loan's been, aside from the forbearance, but if you're late and haven't done the forbearance, most likely there's attorney liens. And so the lender only has to calculate all of the late payments and interest and late fees, your negative escrow account. They also have to collect the attorney fees. So those could also take a longer period of time or additional help from the client. We try to do as much as we possibly can, right? Without inconveniencing people, because it is a very stressful time for sellers and buyers in this process. So we try to make it easy, but sometimes we need extra help. Okay, so then this right here talks about construction liens. So like if a mechanic's lien, right here. So if you have someone that's recently done construction on a property, you might have some construction notices, like preliminary lien notices. Those will be clear. Those are super easy. If your client has recently done like flooring in the property or windows and they're on like a payment plan, most likely will require them to pay that off completely through the transaction. If you have a client, a buyer or seller who is child support liens will be a part of the property too. Child support, if they're on a payment plan, we just need to confirm that they are up to date. If they are not, then we would need to get them up to date through the transaction. Okay. Buyers, any pending liens, judgments, not taxes not paid, child support things not being paid. It is honestly up to the lender to decide if they are going to require them to pay it. It doesn't matter. It won't affect the owner's title policy, but it will be recorded trailing of the mortgage. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. If your buyer's like, oh, I have some pending things, honestly, it's up to the lender if they want those to be taken care of through the transaction, but it's not a requirement. Sellers, it's a requirement. Buyers, it's not. Okay. Here, so this is, we need a special approval. I don't know why for the title policy. It's super easy, but they want, yeah, super simple. But they require approval upon receipt and review. So basically what they're saying is we will not insure this property unless you show us that everything's going to be cleared and paid. So in this situation, it didn't go. Again, I'm not sure why, right? And then here they do, they wanted more identity. So here, if it requires something specific, so let's say there was a deed that was not recorded correctly, that will also be listed on here. And sometimes they require the correction to be made. If the recording isn't done right, I try to go back to the people who handled it to see if they corrected the deed. Sometimes they don't, and I just try to assist them in the process because sometimes counties will accept just like a quick affidavit of correction. Sometimes they require a full recording, re-recording of it. Hopefully that never happens to your clients, but sometimes we do have to go back a couple, one person to have them re-sign things. So that will also be listed here. Okay, any questions? We are done.
Wow.
Right.
So
Crazy.
I know. It's super pretty. Don't be alarmed though. That is not everybody.
They make the other ones look really good though.
Yeah.
So like all those items, like
Yeah.
so like all those items, if it's I guess more of a clear title report, it'll have less items.
Right.
Okay.
So let me go. So in a normal transaction, right? Let me just kind of go through. So you'll have the boilerplate of like and all the random things that they'll cover, and then you'll probably have 7 or 8 items, and then it'll say 2021 property taxes have been paid, not yet due, or whatever. It'll say state the current property tax. It'll then say if they're part of the improvement district, part of this improvement district. It'll list your HOA, and then you'll have a deed. That's it. So your normal title report in this section should honestly have maybe 13 things listed. At most.
So you get a 12-page title report, you're like, all right.
If you have
It's a lot of
if you have
pages.
54 things listed, maybe run the other direction.
You're like,
Burn the
Cancel
paper
that.
and-
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so typically a typical report is about 13 items. Okay. So yeah, definitely a fraction. So 10 common title issues. So errors in public records, unknown liens, illegal deeds, missing deeds, forgeries. All sound really scary. They happen. The worst one I've heard of was this lady owns, I think, 34 properties in Nevada. They were all rental properties. Someone found out that they were rental properties. They did an illegal deed to transfer ownership from her to themselves, and they took out mortgages on all the properties. And so she got the properties back, but she had to pay all of those mortgages. So kind of like these things happen. It sucks. And there's a lot that title policies can do, but there also are things that they can't help with. But yeah, forgeries are not fun. But unfortunately do happen. Undiscovered encumbrances, unknown easements, undiscovered will, false impersonation of previous owner. So like an undiscovered will could be like sibling says, no, I have the right, right? She told me that there's a will, but there is no will, or there's a change to the will. Those things can happen. It's just really important that we see all those documents. I know that title sometimes can be annoying, but we need to see a full trust. So if you have a client that wants to buy or sell and they have the property in a trust, we need their trust documents to make sure, especially if there's been a death of trustee and we're assigning successor trustees, we need to see the full trust to make sure that the proper succession of the trustees happens. Make sure that everyone has the right, because some people are like, no, I'm the oldest, it's me next. But that might not be the case in a will or a trust. Now, in regards to trust, a trust supersedes a power of attorney and a will. So they can say, I have power of attorney, mom, and I have a will. I don't care if the trust says, well, I'm sorry. The trust is the entity that owns the property. So if the trust dictates that this person has the right to sell, the right to continue on with the succession of the properties, that stands. Only time a will can be used in title is for probate court. So if you have to go to probate, you take the will, but then the courts determine, okay, yeah, you're the rightful heir, you can go ahead and do that. Power of attorneys, they can be used if the person's alive. I know it sounds super weird for me to say, but this just happened. If the person is alive, we can use the power of attorney. If they're deceased, obviously we can't. We just had someone try to use power of attorney with the deceased person because they had passed away a couple of days before closing, which is super sad, right? But we need a death certificate. So if someone's passed away and part of the transaction, unfortunately, even if it delays it a week, we have to have that documentation to show that that person is deceased. We want to know all of this, right? It's super important. So please don't hide anything from title to try to get around something, because eventually we do find out, or you know, the wrong person comes to closing. We're like, who are you? Who are you? With names, so sometimes too for deeds, I've recently out here, I actually see it a lot. So California is very, very strict on how you hold title, how your name is spelled, what the vesting is, everything. Out here, people are really lenient. You can't sign in a nickname, just so you know. Your name needs to match your ID, okay? A notary cannot and should not notarize you if your name does not match the documents. So if you've gotten married, this has happened a lot during COVID. Well, I got married if I just haven't changed my name yet. Okay, sorry, you have to sign in what your ID says. So always keep that in mind. If they've gone through a recent name change, the way to change that is like if they're a seller, you just put Billy Jane, previously known as or also known as, and we list the name that's on title. But keep that in mind though, that the government issued ID, either a passport or a driver's license, must show the name that they're signing. For buyers, they're a little more strict. So we have what's called a USA Patriot Act form. That has to have, you have to have a driver's license, whether from here or from a different country. You have to have an identification card as one form. And then a second one could be a birth certificate, passport, social security card, organizational card. Names have to match everything. Some lenders do accept passports, but not every lender does. I know that's weird, but it's not considered a primary form. It could be a secondary, but not primary. Just depends on the USA Patriot Act form that they use. Okay. So another common title issue, especially here, boundary issues. This is the last part. We have about like, I don't know, 12 more minutes left. So boundary, super, super fun. Okay. So here you'll see this survey. Now, back to the title report. If there is a known boundary issue in the area that your client is buying a home or selling a home in, it'll put it on there. Sometimes an underwriter will require a survey for the property. Okay. So if you see on the PR survey is required, that is up to you guys to figure out who's going to pay for it, but it will be needed to confirm the boundaries of the property. Okay. So here, this is an example. And this is just, so here you have the fence line, right? But this is the actual boundary line. So this person over here has been using 27 feet of the neighboring property. Super great. Awesome. No, not acceptable. So if you see something like this, this is when you would, as a buyer, be like, is that right? You can go and get a survey and get it corrected. Let me go over to, here we go. Any discrepancies, conflicts in the boundary lines, shortage in the area, encroachments, other facts which in survey can correct it. So surveys should will establish the new line, but then sometimes it goes into disputes. Lovely. So here we go. This one is super fun. So this is a local community right around here with a ton of boundary lines issues. So if you look over here, this is a newer development and you'll see that the boundary lines are pretty great, right? So you see that they have boundary lines for the sidewalks, that follows the street line great, no lines going through the houses. Okay, so what happened, these two houses over here said, you're on my property. You gotta get off. Well, what happened is this house here had a wall down here on the property. So they went into a dispute. The dispute caused the whole area to be resurveyed. You can see here that this house is cut off. This one has a line right through it. So, so I don't know how you can do that. So in situations like this, with the boundary dispute, I mean, it's a mess, right? Like so many houses are cut right through. It is then going to be like, all right, we got to go to court and we're going to negotiate. I'll remove my wall. So I think in this case right here between these two people, they moved the wall back a couple feet and negotiated the property. So this is fun. When you see boundary issues or an additional survey, this is why. So it's just to protect your client. I would always recommend on like land to get a survey, making sure that it's correct. Now, let's say that there is a boundary issue and the two parties, neighboring parties say, okay, fine, let's correct the boundary because it's farmlanded. Let's correct it. It needs to be recorded with the county. So you'd have to go to an attorney. The attorney will then draft the new legal description. It'll be recorded on the property and then you can move forward with the transaction. Okay, that's how you fix legal descriptions. But yeah, there's some arrows point like the best ones. Like that one up there. That one's cut in half. We already saw that one. These are the properties that have a dispute, and then This one over here, super great. Any questions?
So there was one online about if they have proof of the forgeries, why did they still have to be accountable for the mortgages?
Because, yeah, that's hard. Because the lender already had their interest on the property. Yeah, so I would probably say because at the time that those liens were recorded, the owners of the property were the people who took out the loans. So basically what had happened, this person sold all of her properties and paid off the loans, which is really unfortunate. But once the home is encumbranced, it's encumbranceed. I don't know of any lender that will be like, well, oh, well, they have interest in the property. According to them, their deed of trust was legally signed. So it's our court system. To me, I don't think it's right. Especially because like she owned them all free and clear, and then she had to pay off a mortgage and walked away with, half of what she owned or more, So with that being said too, like another example of that could be somebody trying to avoid judgments or liens. So right now I have unfortunately a property in transaction and they're like, oh, we want to transfer ownership before closing. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We could do that. A couple of weeks later, there's an attorney lien slapped on it. They were trying to avoid paying a judgment. I personally, if ownership needs a transfer before the end, not due to probate, not due to something else, I don't record those until recording for that reason, because I don't want to be tied in to a lawsuit saying, well, they're just trying to avoid me. Like, oh, okay, like, how am I supposed to know that? So the attorney, you can't remove yourself from a property to avoid paying judgments. So if your spouse has a bunch of liens, that sucks. Those liens have to be paid. If you've gone through a divorce and you didn't know, and you got awarded a property and you didn't know about a lien that was recorded on it, you have to pay it because they were on the property at the time before it was awarded to you. And that's unfortunate. Again, why it's really important to do a title search. But yeah, so I mean, people, that person, even though they were forgeries, right? And she got her ownership back because that's what the owner title policy did. It protected her ownership. She still had all those liens, and it's super difficult to, to show, well, I know you have interest, but it wasn't me who signed it, but at the time they owned the property legally. And that's why. So any other questions? Anybody up here? In here? No? I mean, we're good. We're at that 90 minutes. So, hey, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, look at all the people. Hello.
Look at all that.
Oh, those faces. Mariano!
Oh, is Mariano here? Mariano!
Tracy feels bad.
Oh, hi, Tracy. And Brad.
Where's Mariano at?
What up,
We
my
were talking about
people?
you
The others
We
never
miss
turn their
you,
camera on, so
Mariano.
they don't get credit.
Ross Archer doesn't have his camera on. He doesn't get credit.
I didn't want it. Plus, I was in the room.
Hey, see you guys.
Swag bag.